Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
Okay, welcome to this week's episode of Make It Plain. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. However you are taking in this podcast, thanks for the support. Please do like and subscribe as always. Firstly, apologies, I'm posting this a few days late. Usually I post this on Saturday, but we were trying to get our ducks in a row because we were holding off posting the news. This is why I was saying this last week. I was saying, look, something's making me tired and angry. It's still making me tired and angry. Is the news that you may have heard. The university management at my university, Birmingham City University, have decided to get rid of Black Studies altogether. So they closed the undergraduate degree 2024 and actually decided to relaunch a new master's degree, Master's in Black Studies and Global Justice, which, by the way, has been running for less than a year. This is the first time we run it, started in October. By February, we found out they had decided to close that course. And as a result of closing that course, they've now said that the 5 Black members of staff, me and my 4 colleagues, are all now potentially at risk of redundancy. This is even though the Vice Chancellor promised this would not happen when he closed the undergraduate degree. And, by the way, we are all appointed in the Department of Criminology and Sociology and can all teach criminology and sociology. And there are things for us to teach. But a decision has been made to focus solely on the 5 Black members of staff in the sociology part of that team and to put us up for redundancy. So that's been the news. We waited for a bit. I had this happened, I say a week and a bit ago. Dates are eluding me. But we wanted to wait to put the news out because I had an open letter. So I had this open letter, been circulating that for about a week and a bit. Excuse me. The open letter eventually got to 130 signatures, had people like Yomi Adedoke signed it, Nell Zabi signed it, Professor Gargi Bhattacharya signed it, Professor Nicola Rollick signed it. We had lots of American professors over there signed it. We had range of people signed it, people all over the world, people in Africa, people in Latin America, people even in Australia, New Zealand, had a lot of support from across. So we wanted to send this letter. This letter is now written, has been sent today to the Board of Governors, gone over the management's head, if you like, gone to the Board of Governors. That's now public. So you may have seen there's an article in The Guardian about it. There's an article in the Times Higher. There's the BBC going to do some stuff. So we were waiting for everything to come out before we shared the news with everybody. But that's what's obviously been getting me angry and tired, which I probably still look angry and tired because they finally came for Black Studies and came for people's jobs and did it in a really, really, really terrible way. I am going to get into this in a second, so I do want to give a bit more detail, a bit more background, and also, use this as a teachable moment. But before that, actually, before I go into that, we did just have the elections. Actually, the reason we postponed, because we were going to put this out last week, but the reason we postponed putting it out last week was the election coverage. So, see, Dawn Butler MP advised not to go with the letter and everything last week because Thursday was the elections. I said my first time voting in local elections. Not actually true. I did vote in a local election once, years and years ago. My first time voting in these local elections in my area local elections because a guy knocked on my door. So I just went and voted for him. He didn't win, by the way. I think Labour won here. I don't know. Local elections, who cares? Anyway, so because of the elections, and we knew there was going to be lots of reform stuff, knew there was going to be lots of coverage. So that's why we postponed it. And I didn't want to not say anything about the elections because I think it is important, obviously. Farage, Reform did extraordinarily well. Labour did extraordinarily badly. The Conservatives did actually worse. If you really think about it, they did worse because they're not the party in power and they lost like 500 seats. That's not really supposed to happen. So if anything, the Conservatives did worse than Labour. But the two main parties are really bad. Greens did well, but not spectacular. The spectacular performance was from Reform. That 1,400 councillors, they control a number of councils now. In fact, me and my son, was it Kaderia? Me and my son were watching the coverage and you could see Reform with his big Cheshire Reform. Farage with his big smile on his face. For those who not listen in England, Nigel Farage, been a racist for a long time, right-wing politician, banging on about getting out the immigrants. Has one policy basically, which is get out the immigrants, which has done him very well since 2007 probably. Ever since the UK joined the European Union, and when the European Union joined, and then they expanded, not joined, but when the European Union expanded to include Eastern Europe, migration increased. He's been literally dining off that one topic for 20 years, almost 20 years now. So before he's on the fringes, now he's very much in the mainstream, and people are worried he's going to be the next prime minister. So because of the results, we're seeing all of the poll. Oh, if you extrapolate this landslide election for reform, etc., etc., and he's all smiling. Oh, we're great, we're great, we're great. So people are rightly worried. Reform are lunatics. If they do get in power, if Nigel Farage is prime minister, God knows what happens. Because one of the things we talk about with like the monarchy here, so I keep saying abolish the monarchy, abolish the monarchy. It's not just a symbol. Like the whole electoral system is rotten because of that bloody monarchy. The monarchy is effectively the head of state. Effectively doesn't really do anything, but effectively. And then you have these two chambers, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. So in theory, the way that should work, 3 different chambers, head of state, House of Lords, House of Commons, there should be checks and balances. Like in the US, you have the Senate, House of Representatives, and the presidency, and also the judiciary. Supreme Court is supposed to be part of that too. And they all give checks and balances, right? So the midterm elections coming up for Trump, hugely important, because if he loses the House or the Senate, can't really pass that much policy anymore, because you need to have all the houses need to connect, right? That is not the case in the UK. In the UK, House of Commons is dominant, completely dominant. House of Commons can actually enforce. So the House of Commons laws do have to go through the House of Lords, but there's something called the Parliament Act that says the House of Commons can override the House of Lords. So the House of Lords is really a check-in, can do a bit of things, but end of the day, if you have a majority in the House of Commons in Parliament, you can pass whatever law you want, and the King will just rubber stamp it. The King, in theory, doesn't have to sign any law, but if they didn't, the whole thing falls apart, so the King always does. So that basically means if you have a majority, you have almost unchecked power, other than, I guess, the courts if something's illegal. But even then, we're no longer in the EU in some ways, so some of that's a bit dodgier. But, other than the courts, there's really no checks and balances in the UK system. So if Farage did have a majority and did become prime minister, they could pass most laws they wanted. You could see me deported. Who knows? It could be really, 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 really bleak. So people are worried. Obviously, these election results aren't good. Millions of people went out and voted for the racist party. And when I say the racist party, they're all racist parties, but the fascist, let's just say the fascist party, because Reform are really, really, that really is their what's I say blueprint, footprint. That's where they're at, the fascist party. So, but this is a big but. So I'm always trying to give you different ways to look at things, and I'm going to give you a positive spin on this. I actually think it was probably one of the best possible results of this election was that Reform did so well. And why do I say that? Obviously, it's not because I'm a big fan of Reform or Nigel Farage. Clearly not. I don't want them to be elected into Parliament. I think it would be horrendous. But the reason when I was watching with my son and watching this smug little bastard, sorry for saying it, I know I went London on that one. Smug little bastard, for Farage, it actually made me feel more comfortable because they won so spectacularly. The question was put to him, well, are you going to do a deal with the Conservative Party? So the Conservative, that's Kemi Badenoch. They're the establishment party. They are the second largest party in the House of Commons currently. And he just laughed it off. Why would we do that? Look how well we're doing, right? Because they've done so well, and they'll probably continue to do well in local elections, right? Local elections are, I don't want to say they're meaningless, but the turnout is very, 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 very low. So most people do not vote in local elections, which means you have these results, right? Because most people aren't voting, and even when they are voting, no one's really taking it that seriously, right? Like I was thinking, I did vote in the local election. I try to remember, I did vote when I was younger, and I actually voted for the BNP. The BNP were like properly far right, and I did it as a joke. That's how serious I took I was like in my 20s, but that's how serious I took my local election vote. I went, let me go vote for the BNP, because why not? That will be a joke. That'll be funny, right? People don't take it seriously. Local elections, there's no power here. In Birmingham, particularly, you can't even collect the bins. I mean, that's it. You have one job, collect the bins, can't do the bins. So nobody votes, and nobody takes it seriously. So you can't really extrapolate out and say because you don't vote in local elections, you're going to do well in general elections. This happens a lot. So the Green Party do well in local elections, don't get seats. UKIP. So UKIP was Farage's former party, United Kingdom Independence Party. They did really well in one local election. Not this well, by the way, but at one point they had 500 councillors. 500. That's a lot, right? How many seats in Parliament do they have? None. Farage couldn't get into Parliament until recently. So it doesn't translate necessarily, right? Because they're two very, 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 very different things, different electorates, different everything, right? So this is going to be hubris. You already see the hubris that Farage has. And I think this is going to be the huge mistake. So the danger for me was always if Conservative Party and Reform link up, making a pact, they win. They probably do win a landslide, right? Because Conservatives, they're taking votes from each other, mostly Reform, they're taking votes from Conservatives. But, the Conservatives have the credibility, they have the establishment, they can, if they actually make a coalition, they beforehand, the pact before the election, they will win the election, and they will win the election by a lot. That's to me is a terrifying thing. So if I'm looking at it, I'm going, what's terrifying? Conservatives and Reform pre-election pact. This makes that very, very unlikely, right? Because he's like, well, I can win. He's arrogant. He's a joker. He's not looking at this properly. He thinks he can win. So the question why am I not worried about Reform winning? And this is partly because of the electoral system in the UK. It is not like in some European countries where you have proportional representation. So if you had proportional representation, they'd win a lot of seats, right? 20% of the vote. You can get 20% of the vote and not get many seats, because the way it works in the UK is first past the post. You have these different seats. You can get 20% in every seat. If you don't win a seat, you don't get a vote. If you don't win a seat, you don't get into Parliament. All right. My mum has always said she never wanted proportional representation because the whole proportional representation lets in the Nazis. That's what she always said. Proportional representation lets in the Nazis. If we had proportional representation, we literally would be let in the modern day equivalent, if you like. Well, certainly fascists. I'm not going to call them Nazis, but certainly the fascist party would be in. But first past the post really prevents that in a way, because you actually what you're voting for is the country's. You're voting for people, right? You are voting for the party, but you're really voting. You have to have a person. I have an elected MP who goes and sits in Parliament, so I'm voting for a person, right? And really importantly, that person needs to be credible. At local elections, nobody cares, so we just vote for anybody. In the national elections, we do tend to care, right? You need to have a credible person. So for Reform to get, for Nigel Farage to be prime minister, Reform would need to be the majority, right? Majority is 326 seats, so at least 326. Individual people would need to win for Reform to win the election, and for Farage to be prime minister. That's a lot of people. Now, that is a lot of credible people. What did we see last time? So last time we had a national election on this issue, there was a what we call it. There was a by-election. So a Labour MP stepped down. The seat was open, and everybody said Reform was going to win. Reform was going to win. This was not that long ago. So the same. We're in the same kind of period of time, same kind of popularity of Reform, and everybody said Reform's going to win. Reform's going to win. Reform's going to win. And even in by-elections, everybody doesn't vote, so you tend to have a much lower turnout. So you can get this. In fact, when we had, if you want a nigger for a neighbour, vote Labour, Peter Griffiths in '64, that was in Smethwick. That was a by-election, because by-elections, less people tend to vote. In the actual election, he got voted out by a lot, right? So even by-elections aren't really necessarily representative. But in this by-election, it seemed clear that Reform was going to win. It was up north in one of their target areas. They'd done really well. I'm sure they did very, very well in the local elections. But their candidate was Matthew Goodwin, former professor. Now he's a GB News right-wing nubbin. I don't mean nubbin, that's very English slang. But probably one of their most credible people, but actually completely off the charts, not credible at all. And guess what? He lost. He lost an election that nobody thought he was going to lose. They thought landslide. But the Greens won. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because Matthew Goodwin, everybody looked at him and goes, who the hell is this guy? We can't vote for this joker. This is going to happen again and again and again and again and again for Reform, right? Now, I'm not saying they won't win any seats. They will win some seats. But I can't see it. 320, that's a lot. That's a lot. Even if you look at their councillors. So 1,000 councillors that got voted in, could say, oh, they must be credible people, right? But hold on. One of their councillors, Reform candidate, I'm taking this from Reform Racism. No, the Canaries, from the Canary Instagram page, Canary UK. They do lots of good stuff, by the way. Check out independent media, Canary UK. And they have a list here that says Reform candidate who said, shoot the PAKIS. I'm not going to repeat that one on the P words on the spot. One in a seat in a local election. And another one, who actually, this guy's left. This guy he became a councillor, has already retired. Grand opening, grand closing. Reform candidate said Nigerians should be melted down to fill potholes. He won a seat in the local elections. Someone else, Reform candidate, who claimed the Holocaust was a hoax. won a seat in the elections, and the Reform UK candidate who said the racially aggravated rape of a Sikh woman was good has been elected councillor in Essex. This is the caliber of people we're talking about. None of those people are getting elected in a general election. In a full general election, none of those people would have been elected. And I guarantee you, if you go through the people who got voted for reform, you're going to find similar things, right? This is the problem they have. Can they actually get this many people voted in? I'm going to say I doubt it. For me, the worry was always reform and conservatives. And that's now probably not going to happen. Also, what you have is they now control a lot of councils. So reform now controls a lot of councils, and they have one policy. That one policy, they have literally one policy. The one policy they have is don't want immigrants. You can't run a country, and you definitely can't run a council that has absolutely nothing to do with immigration, really any controls of immigration whatsoever on that one issues. They are, and like I said, they're all not. I'm sure there's some credible reform people, but a lot of them really aren't. This is going to be a disaster. They're going to be some of the worst wrong. Let me predict this now. They're going to be some of the worst wrong councils in the history of history. By the time the election comes about, which again, we're still quite a way away from the election as well. Too early to predict anything. By the time we get to the election, I don't think they're going to be that popular. So I would say take this as a positive. I would say it's hard to say that, right? Because you see him win, and you're like, is it really a positive? But hubris, pride comes before a fall. The most dangerous thing is conservative reform. That is as far away as it's been, and if it stays as far away, we're probably going to be okay in the end, maybe. Other thing it does, it gets us upset. What does Malcolm say? When you're on a hot seat, you get more angry. We should be angry. We should be upset. We should be mobilizing. Yes, I'm not saying be complacent at all. Mobilize against the threat of reform. It is serious. But it should also make us know what country we're in. You thought you were in Great Britain. It was great to you. Loves you. Nah, no. Millions of people just voted for fascists. Millions of people just voted for fascists. That is your country, people. That should tell you what our state is. That should tell you where we are. That should tell you who the real face. I mean, Nigel Farage is unfortunately one of the real faces of this country. And it should remind us that we need to organize. We need black organization. We need independent stuff. So if it gets you thinking about that, I can't be sad about that either. We need each other. Let's stop relying on them. Because if you get rid of reform, if reform don't get in and Labour get in, this government's horrendous. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. We're saying we don't want reform, but we're happy with this? Jeez, honestly, my God. Obviously, we don't want reform, but they're all terrible. What they should tell us that we need ourselves. That's what we need. We need ourselves. Independence. That's what we've been saying for a long time. That's what we've been saying for a long time. We're actually going to have an annual general meeting of the Harambe Organization of Black Unity soon. We have some plans, discussions about what we're doing, how we're going to get people involved. This is what we should be focusing on. This is what we're going to focus on very clearly in the next few weeks. So yeah, I just wanted to say that quick one on reform because everybody's bleak, it's all sad, but there's lots of silver linings. The silver linings may turn out to be lead and poisonous, but for now, let's be optimistic and let's look at the silver linings. All right, so on the reform thing, actually, somebody did say to me this, like, going back to the big thing we're going to chat, I was going to talk about, give a bit of explanation was the course being closed and all of us being at risk of redundancy. Was when I can't remember who it was. I said this to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, they're getting ready for reform." Like, because when reform come in, your course is dead anyway, right? And it's like, that does have that feeling to it, right? Like this attack on black intellectual thought, attack on black ideas, attack on black knowledge, etc., etc. Maybe that is. Maybe the university is like, hey, we give up. Reform's going to win. Let's just start cutting the black stuff now. Because to be honest, like, this whole, I'm trying to use this as a teachable moment. I mean, I am a sociologist by training and by trade, and actually by contract. I need to tell my job don't seem to understand this, that I actually am a sociologist. In not just in theory, actually in practice. But anyway, this is a whole nother story. So I'm gonna teach you a moment, talk about bureaucracy, talk about the whole thing, obviously. So, I mean, this goes back to, it was a couple of weeks ago now, probably, well, by the time you listen to this, probably a couple of weeks ago. I was actually it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was at Cambridge University. Talk about whiteness personified, that place. It's actually not like, so when I was at Hamilton College, maybe that's more modern. I don't know. It didn't seem as fusty and stuffy as Oxford. There weren't as many pictures of, and I judged this by how many pictures of dead white men are on the wall when I'm walking through. And so Harmonton wasn't that bad. I was like, okay, this that's different, a bit more modern, but it was a new building, so this could be the issue. But Operation Black Vote, old Operation Black Vote leader, Lord Simon Woolley, is the chair, principal, head, I don't know, some title of Harmonton College in Cambridge, and he had this event, and the event was all about racism, microaggressions in the workplace. What do we do, etc., etc., etc. So I went down. I was one of the keynotes. Professor Nicola Rollock was one of the keynotes. Has an excellent book out, which the name is now eluding me, completely eluding me. But check out Professor Nicola Rollock's last book. It was really, 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 really good. Even though I can't remember the name, but this is, like I said, tired and getting old. And Jason Arde, Professor Jason Arde, who's professor at Cambridge, with the keynotes. There were lots of people there. Actually, some of the black students came down for the day as well. You know, I'm giving my keynote, talking about racism in higher education, talking about the problems of the university. I'm always talking about this, right? I mean, oh my God! One day I will write a book about. One day I will write a book about this. One day, about everything that has gone on with Black Studies. It's been a night. Like, I want to say a nightmare because there's been some really good parts of it. It's not been a nightmare. There's been some really, really, really good parts. All the work we've done, the people we've connected with, the stuff we've done, even colleagues. You know, yeah, even colleagues like my best friends are there. We've done some properly good stuff. So I cannot in any way, shape, or form say that Black Studies at BCU has been a nightmare. I can say that BCU has been a nightmare. That most of the things we've done have been in spite of, not because of, the university. In fact, I can't think of one thing that's been because of. The only thing they really do is pay us, and they underpay us anyway. So even that one, I can't really be too high on. But it's been a lot, right? It's been a lot. I can tell you stories. I'm not going to tell those stories today, but at some point there'll be a whole. Oh my God, there has to be a tell-all. What happened? What, etc. Anyway, and aside, so I'm giving this keynote, talking about all these problems. Also saying, look, stay positive. One of the things about academic jobs, which I always say, my time is mostly my own. I can sit here in the middle of the day doing a podcast. It's fine. I can say it is generally academic output. I can go to conferences. I can do this. I get to travel. I get to do work. I get to, 90% of my time is probably my own. Not for the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks, all I've been doing is bloody spending time fighting back against redundancies, etc., etc., etc. But generally speaking, it's every job is a plantation, and there's not really a job. I can't think of a job that would be this flexible, that you allow you to do this much stuff as part of your job, right? And actually have that much autonomy to say, I'm going to write about this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, etc. Right? So anyway, what I always say is it's incumbent upon us to make sure we use that privilege correctly, and oftentimes we don't. I'll just be real, right? So I've said many times that professor is like slave preacher. That's how I think of professor, like slave preacher. I'm in a position which is mostly terrible, right? The term professor, even at the conference, I was saying, stop calling. Everybody calls him professor. It's like, why? Like, professor that's a white thing. This is something that can be taken away. Like, for example, if I'm made redundant, I'm no longer professor. It's a job title given by a white institution that has shown multiple times it either has very little respect for me, my work, our work, community, or just actually dislikes us, actually actively devalues and dislikes us. That's where that title comes from. So how can that be a title that I give any meaning to other than it gives me more money? And not even enough. Like I said, I'm chronically underpaid as a professor anyway. But for me, it's the problem. It's like, I always say this, it's like chief constable. Like, it really is. It's like chief constable or something else. It's not. If you actually understand what professors do, professor is the reason we're there, deeply problematic. Anyway, so we're having this conversation. I'm going off on a tangent now, but anyway, having this conversation at the event, and I'm even sitting there going, no, this is, but trying to be positive, and I always am positive because, like I said, with slave preacher, that was the case where most slave preachers, the whole point of slave preaching was to pacify the masses, do negative things, etc. But there's privilege, right? Slave preacher could go to different plantations and talk. The slave preacher could talk to big groups of people. Slave preacher could read. Slave preacher could do things because they had that position. And it ended up being people like Nat Turner in America, people like Sam Sharp in Jamaica, who lead the rebellions, right? Because they use that privilege. So this is how I always say we need to use our privileges in institutions, is to say, well, look, You give us these privileges. Are we using them to are we using them to connect? Are we using them to build? Are we using them to do stuff outside? Are we not just doing what we're meant to do, which is to pacify the young black people who come into the university, and to the young poor people, the young white people who come into the university? That's what universities do. That's a function nowadays of university. So I'm always pushing that. Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that? And that's why I've stayed in it for so long. One, I got 4 kids. I need to give them food, and the body's not bad. But two, also there is a real appreciation of how can we use that privilege to do good things. Like I said, I think with Black Studies we've done a lot of things collectively that I'll be very, very proud of, which we should all be very, very proud of. And there's many things we're going to do and might still do. Who knows if things get pushed back with this decision. And so having that conversation anyway, and I'm chatting to somebody at lunch. Again, I can't remember who I was chatting to, but they were asking me at lunch. Oh my god, that was one thing. Simon, if you're listening, like you can't have a lunch where you're inviting black people in, you're saying problems with racism, and then have them dusty sandwiches. Them sandwiches were dusty. The worst sandwiches I ever seen. Like, they were dusty. Oh my god, the buffet was not decolonized. Very first thing you got to do is decolonize that buffet. Them sandwiches. But I had to stop at I had KFC. I think I had KFC on the way back. I couldn't do it. Hurt my soul. Like that was a microaggression. That wasn't even a microaggression. That was an actual aggression. That hurt. Man, come on. You got to get the Caribbean caterer, African caterer. Somebody get some samosas. I don't care. Don't. You can't give them dusty sandwiches. Anyway, sorry, I decided. So while I'm choking on these dusty sandwiches, somebody comes and asks me, they were chatting and they're saying, well, how are you still employed? How has the university not come for your job yet? And to be honest, I genuinely left. I was like, nah, they're not that stupid. Come on, they're not going to do that. They'll leave us alone. It's just a few of us. We're doing good work. Our university has I believe it's only 2. It could be more, but certainly last year there were only 2 black vice chancellors, and vice chancellors are people who run the university in the UK. There's only 2 black vice chancellors in the UK. One is at BCU, the other one's at Leeds Beckett University. They're actually childhood friends as well. I can't remember the guy's name in Leeds. I met him a couple of years ago. 2 black vice chancellors. Our vice chancellor, David Mbar, always on about supporting black staff, supporting black students, made an effort to clean out some of the white faces at the top and bring in black and brown, but mostly black people actually, into like management positions. We have a black leadership program now for students. They just literally the day that they say they're going to get rid of us, they advertise a black research network at the university for postgrads. Ironic, given they trying to get rid of the black staff and black postgraduates. But anyway, so I'm like, given all this stuff, given the fact that we're still here, whatever, like we're not really I ain't do no damage, and they do no harm. I'm doing good things, right? We have what we call a research excellence framework that, our work is hugely a part of. Black Studies literally is an impact case study by itself, in that if people who know what REF is, my point is we're actually integral to the research of the whole department, and et cetera, et cetera. I was like, there's no way. And then also just cause too much hassle, so what would you do? There's just no point. So I literally laughed at this suggestion. I was like, nah, it's fine. And I was joking, saying, I don't really want to be there forever, but I'll probably die as professor of Black Studies at BCU, because A, there's no other jobs, and B, yeah, at some point you just get stuck. You get stuck. This is part of the problem when you get paid and you get that job money and that pension. You just start to rely on it, especially when you got kids. That's one of them things. So I'm laughing. I literally, that was a conversation I had then, and probably 5-10 minutes after that conversation, email pings. It's or maybe I got the email before, but I read it after that because I was doing the topics. And the email is being summoned. So in sociology, so criminology, sociology is a big department. Sociology is the smaller part of that. Now, to understand, this story is so ridiculous. Black Studies comes out of sociology. So I was employed in sociology. Other colleagues at Dean Taylor was employed in sociology. Black Studies came out. Everybody who originally taught on Black Studies was actually in sociology, and the undergraduate degree had a sociology module. It wasn't actually a whole degree. We talk about Black Studies, the undergrad, like it was a whole degree. It wasn't. It was really half a degree that had sociology modules in it, and then we changed the sociology modules to have Black Studies content so that we could have it a whole degree, right? And sociology students could take some of the Black Studies modules. So Black Studies was never a standalone by itself thing. It was always an integrated part of sociology, part of the department. The modules are SUC modules, they're sociology modules. It's just like we run different courses and essentially a course that the department runs. This is important context for what happens next, right? Isn't a standalone thing. It's just a course that we teach. So all of my research, all of the research stuff, all of the other stuff that's in our workload, that's departmental. That's sociology. Again, my contract is sociology. I was appointed as senior lecturer in sociology, promoted to associate professor in sociology, and professor in Black Studies is a title that I personally chose. That's when you become professor, you choose your title. If there was no Black Studies undergraduate degree or bachelor's degree, I would still be professor of Black Studies because that's the research thing that I do. So I would have said, look, professor of Black Studies while teaching sociology in the department completely. It has nothing to do with the degrees at all. Nothing. Like literally, when I say nothing, I actually mean nothing, right? So we teach the courses, people leave, people come in. We do hire a couple of people more specifically to say, look, Black Studies stuff, but most people's actual contracts are sociology and everybody's in the department, right? And all of us can teach other stuff within the department. Really, really important context for all of what happens next, right? So when we get called in, but it's just the Black members of staff, right? And the rationale is you teach on Black Studies, therefore we get called in less than, I'd say probably 24 hours, no, less than, I don't know, I want to say less than 24 hours notice, let's say it was 24 hours notice. Weren't told what the meeting was about at all, other than the masters. It's a masters meeting. I was actually me and one of the colleagues were talking, and she was saying, they're gonna close the course, gonna make it redundant. I'm like, no, I was still at this point like, nah, it's not that, can't be that. Maybe they get rid of the course, but it won't be that. Guess what it was? We get there, literally marched in the morning, sit down. Our head of department's there, HR's there, and they just get told, yeah, we decided to close the course. By the way, this is the end of April. They're telling us they made this decision in February. Just telling us now, no discussion, no consultation, no, there's problems here. Can we try and do stuff? The course might be at risk. Nothing. Just, we made the decision in February. Didn't tell you till then. Didn't really tell us why they told us now as well. And two, they wanted to get rid of, we're all at potential risk of redundancy. They only want to keep 2 out of 5 people with little justification, by the way, because it's like there's never no proper way. We've never been told how this has actually worked out. This number of 2 and 3, so you've just been told, right? That's what it is. And so obviously we're surprised. We're like, well, not that surprised because I had this conversation with a colleague before. So in my back of my head, I was like, well, let's think. This is what it is. What do we have to respond here? And literally the way that they have done this, say, look, rather than say, well, one, just closing the course without any consultation, deeply problematic legally, right? Because when you're making redundancies, you do have to actually consult with things. And the reason this happened is because of the masters that we never had any consultation about. The masters just started, like literally just started. If they closed it in February, that means they were really thinking about closing it from like December, because they went to all the meetings and never once talked to us at all. Because we'd had this conversation before about what this might be, I'd gone in a little bit prepared. And I looked at, I asked my manager, I was like, well, you do know that actually we're all sociologists, we can all teach across, there's definitely work we can do within. In fact, we're actually doing this. I've actually since been told there is work I can do in sociology in terms of teaching. Why are you just picking out the Black staff for redundancy? Like, well, surely you look at this as a whole and say, well, look, what work can we integrate everybody into the department? Is there work in the department? And then take a view, right? But no, they're just taken out the Black staff and said, look, you are the ones who are there, just the Black staff, only the Black staff. It's deeply problematic, no justification given our contractual status or work status. For example, I'm a professor, I do teach, but I have lots and lots of research responsibilities. The MA itself is going to be less than 10% of my workload. And with all the other stuff that I was doing, I strongly contend my workload was very, very full up, and I probably need to teach a couple of things. But again, there's stuff that I can teach. I can teach broadly across sociology, criminology, etc. I would say there's clearly no need for any of this. Just take a proper view of the department, look at what work we can do, etc. We're in this proposal. We have to put forward. We have to now try to save our jobs, put forward proposals, and we're putting forward proposals that had we just been asked earlier, we'd have said, like, put us in the sociology crib modules, putting the masters online, open up the modules to students from across the Black Studies modules students across the university. Like we could have had that conversation. That I would say legally should have had that conversation before anybody's talking about redundancy. But none of that's happened. They just jumped to 5 Black members of staff, all in, to say you're the ones and you're the only ones at risk of redundancy because the university, without any consultation whatsoever. And when I say university, I take that back. The management love to talk about themselves as though they are the university. They are not the university. They are in jobs just like I am in a job. VC, vice chancellor, head of department at school, they are in jobs just like I am in a job. They are not the university. The university is us, actually. People who do the work, it's the students. That's the university. Management are just employees who make terrible decisions. To be quite honest, in higher education, employees that make terrible decisions, I think always need to be reminded of it. So university management have decided to close the degree without any consultation. It is then therefore incumbent upon them to make efforts before talking about redundancies to try to include us in. Right? Haven't done it. Just targeted 5 Black members of staff. Said you're at risk of redundancy, etc., etc. Deeply problematic, likely illegal. If not direct discrimination, then clearly indirect discrimination. What has compounded all of this is in the UK, all public bodies and universities are definitely part of this, are subject to the public sector equality duty, which means they have to do what they call an equality impact assessment. So they have to say, look, if we're making a decision, what impact does this have to those people with protected characteristics? For universities, that is students and staff, not just students and staff. You have 5 Black members of staff put up for redundancy. It's very clearly something which can have an impact on an equality impact. And then the students are, I want to say all the students are Black. All students are Black. We have PhD students as well. There's an issue of equality more generally on the curriculum, losing the courses, etc., etc. This is clearly an issue where an equality impact assessment should have been done. They told us in writing. See, they don't usually do this. They usually just don't do it and don't tell you. They told us in writing. They didn't bother to do one because the numbers of staff were too small, so it'd be a GDPR issue. Problem is, according to the law, that is not a reason not to do one. Very clear. You still have to do it. GDPR is about protecting privacy. It's not about not fulfilling your legal duty. And even in their own policies, BC's own policies say that just having a small number of staff, GDPR is not an issue. You just don't share everything. We can make it, you don't have to share everything, but you have to do it. They didn't do it. That's breaking the law. Like literally breaking the public, in breach of the public sector equality duty. And they wrote it down. This is spectacular. Honestly, sometimes I beggars believe how bad things are. So you have no consultation. You have clearly discriminatory or potentially, let me say potentially discriminatory selection for redundancy. You have no equality impact assessment for either staff or students. The students literally got nothing. He sends out an email once we come out of this meeting to staff members and to the students. Tell the students it's been a 3-month review. 3-month review. That never happened. When it did happen, we weren't involved, and that they'd be supported. And that was it. That's the only email they got, by the way. They got told 2 weeks ago they'd be supported and had nothing else from the university management. They have from us. So we've supported them. We've met them. We've been like, yo, we got work to do, etc., trying to make sure you put your assignments in, etc. Nothing has been put in place for management at all. And in fact, the students themselves complained. So the students wrote a letter. They sent that in last week. The only response they've had from university management so far is an email saying they got the message. Nothing else. That's outrageous. The way they treat the students, outrageous. Especially from a university that promises that it is great to Black students, etc., etc., right? So the whole way it's been handled, honestly, beggars belief, right? So we're obviously very, 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 very mad and upset. Oh, I mean, and obviously this isn't even this is just that I wouldn't say that's just procedural, but this is about that. Then there's a bigger issue about why they don't care about the course, why they don't care about the modules, why they don't care about the content, right? This is a huge thing. So in America, like, there's an actual attack on Black intellectual thought, like a proper, like, no critical race theory, getting rid of courses, doing this. Here, there is so little of it that it can't be anything. We're in danger of being erased completely. Honestly, you have there's Black staff in universities, but we have 5 Black members of staff in sociology. We also have Black members of staff in criminology. So there's probably, I want to say 8. I could be wrong. 9? 10? I don't know. They could be 10. There actually could be 10 Black members of staff. I'm not 100% sure. But there could be 10 Black members of staff in our whole department. That is completely and utterly unheard of in UK higher education. The reason we were able to run Black Studies courses, the reason we got Black Studies in the first place, because we had these Black members of staff, because we started doing Black Studies research. And let me stress this, Black Studies research has always been part of the sociological research at BCU. Always. I was the head of research at BCU from 2014 onwards. And it was Black Studies is what we're doing. It's part of sociology, very much part of sociology. And that's how we actually got Black Studies staff, and that's how we got the degree. So actually the research led to the degree. Not the other way around, right? It wasn't the other way around. Like I think there's a calculation that the degree is taught to. It's not. The degree was something we did. We do other things. We do many other things, in fact. And so we managed to get the degree because we're probably not probably. I would say the only place that could do it. To do a whole undergraduate degree needs we need lots of staff, right? You need lots of different specialities, etc. And you won't find that anywhere else. Right, it is completely unique, and it's completely positively unique, right? How many Black professors are there in the country now? 200, I think now is the number. There's 130, 150 higher education institutions. So there aren't even two. The average is not two Black professors at every university. I think BCU, and when I say, so one of the things that skews the number sometimes is that when you get into like management positions, they call you professor, but yeah, really professor, because you're not doing anything professorial, right? Like if I'm vice chancellor professor, that's meaningless because there's a vice chancellor, it's a management job, right? Of actual academic professors, how many are there? At BCU, I actually don't know the number, but it's not a big number. So we're right to get made redundant. It will be a significant drop in the Black professors at BCU. I promise you that. It's insane, right? Particularly for a university that has this, that wants to push itself forward as being this thing, right? It wants to push itself forward as, look at the strategy. It's always about getting rid of the awarding gap, which is what about curriculum, right? So one of the things that we suggested previously when they closed down the undergrad degree was actually just keep the modules and open them up, right? Let other students do them. When I did this for one module, which is practically impossible, almost practically impossible because of the way we do things at BCU, and something that again I keep talking to students about, saying, look, make sure. One of the worst things about UK higher education generally, not BCU specific, but generally, is if you compare it to the US. The US has the liberal arts model. This is actually how Black Studies works in America. The liberal arts model, where you're going in, you're not picking a course straight away, you're picking modules and you're building your course. So if we had that here, Black Studies could flourish, because this means students pick this, pick that, pick this, did that, and then major in this, minor in that. And that's how it works in the States. But here, you got to pick your degree with like 17. 16 maybe even, but like 17 for definite, and say, this is what I want to do, this is the courses, this is what it looks like, this is regimented, etc. Now most unis I know give you some flexibility and allow you to pick courses across the board. That is not something that BCU does. And so what we were saying is, look, open it up, just let the people do the courses. Maybe, if you don't want to support a degree, I've always said undergraduate and postgraduate, there's a market for it. We're just not marketing it properly, right? So like most of our students never, like most BCU students would never know there was ever an undergrad or master's in Black Studies. Marketing is, and this needs to be marketed in a different way. I'm not a marketer. It's not my job. I do my best. We do things all the time. We try our best, but it's not really our job, right? So I always say there is a market. It's just not being marketed. But if you want to say don't do the degrees, you still, I would think a university that wants to address the awarding gap, a VC who talks about the awarding gap all the time, right? And the curriculum is always one of them things that comes up. Black students don't feel, and the awarding gap people don't know is, across UK higher education, if you're not white, you are less likely to get a good degree. Pretty much across the board, pretty much across all universities, pretty much across different courses, etc. That is much worse for Black students. And our BCU is a university that has, it's 60% global majority, something like that. Our faculty, I think it's 70%. I don't quote me on the figures, but it's a lot, majority anyway. And so, if you could offer our modules at Black feminism, Black political activism, what else we got? Black arts movement, a master's level. There's what do we do? I'm teaching like two of the modules. I can't tell you what they're called. What's my module I'm teaching right now? It's a Black. That's that stress time. I can't remember the module. I can't remember. Oh, module I'm teaching. I taught literally the other day. I can tell you the number code, but not the actual. I do one on contemporary Black thought and human rights, and one on Black psychology and global health. Right. Offer them out. Let students know. Look, you can come do this, etc. That would build sense of belonging. Also allow them to, really immerse themselves in education that's interesting to them. This is simple things, right? Like if you think that it's valuable. So what the university is telling us with this, and with this decision to get rid of the masters, within a year, when we've got comparable numbers to other masters, it's not like the masters numbers are so bad, so grossly bad that you couldn't. They're not savable. It's saying they don't care. It's saying that we're just not bothered. Like we're happy with the curriculum as the way it is, which is deeply problematic. You have within the team this deep expertise on these areas. Dr. Deion Taylor, a leader on these areas around students, etc., etc., etc. All right. This devaluation of Black studies and Black thought is such a problem, right? Because there's so much. It's so valuable. Like the work that we do, the stuff that we do, should be kept, right? It should be praised. It should be like, even with the students, like, even with the undergraduate students, we had students who never would have come to university, came with very few qualifications. A lot of mature students who would have been told, nah, you can't do it, you can't do that, come out with good degrees, like really good degrees, like transformational. Every one of our students will tell you, change their lives. And we got students who are doing things. I swear we have a disproportionate amount of students who've gone on to postgraduate study, gone on to PhDs. Always getting, can I get a PhD reference? Can I get a PhD reference? People in jobs doing different things. It's the work has been the work, and it's not just my work at all. It's all of our work. The team, all of us have been doing like really stellar work in the uni, in the community, doing the combining the two things, doing the really interesting research. There's so much stuff that just doesn't need to leave and isn't even necessarily tied to the degree. But hey, there's like good practice. There's not just good practice, excellent world leading practice happening in the university, and there is no credibility for it. There is no respect for it. There's no value to it. I'll be honest, like this, there's no way. Like I get invited all the time to talk about these issues elsewhere, and while the work that we're doing internally, they're trying to get rid of. What does that tell you? Deeply problematic. And I said, when you've got a university, when you've got a vice chancellor in particular, David Mbar, who's giving us the talk, giving us all the big talk about equality, all the big talk about students, all the big talk about networks of higher education leaders, postgraduate network, and then you do that. It don't make sense. I always said Malcolm said, look, if you're gonna preach, you can't preach violence on Sunday and then preach peace on Monday. You gotta be consistent. You can't preach race equality on Sunday and then want to get rid of and target and get rid of Black staff and Black intellectual thought on Tuesday. You can't do it. Like if you want to be the reform university, but don't pretend you're something else. You know what I'm saying? Don't pretend you're something else. That's hypocrisy. Like that can't be allowed to stand. Right? I mean, I'll be honest, like if I'm 100% honest, I'm so tired with all this nonsense right now because I got my folder of HR nonsense. It's so long. It goes back so many years. I'm like, what's the point? Like real talk. I'm like, what's the point? Like it gets to a point where you're just like, maybe these things can't work. Like maybe it can't work. Maybe Black studies in the university was an experiment that just needs to end because these places are so hostile, and more hostile in fact when you have Black leadership, ironically, right? Because I think I said this on the last time we had this discussion was I don't think a white vice chancellor would have done it. Could have done it. Would allow it to get to this point. I just don't. I don't think there'd be. I don't think it's credible, or I don't think it's possible because it's so ridiculous. It's so illegally done. Like the way it's been done, the tone of it, the legality of it, the nonsense of it. This is no need for any of this. Could have been avoided if they just talked to us, consulted with us, and I said, and David and Bars refused to talk. VCs refused to talk. Send them an email, pointing out the potential discrimination. You don't get no response. So because of that, what did we do? Obviously, like I said, I'm tired. I said I can't really bother, and part of me just wants to go, yo, this is so mad. Let's just walk. But it's important if you're gonna. It's important, but it's important on principle. And it's important for many reasons, right? And I got 4 kids, so when you got 4 kids, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? And also, just it's a whole team of people who are affected by this. But again, management has shown no care at all to those issues. I just say that. Maybe they care deep down, they ain't showing it, but that's what we call the bureaucratic, and I'll give you some sociology, the bureaucratic personality. You literally take on the institution, right? Like you become the institution. So you're talking you're in this meeting talking to people, you ain't talking to like a person, you're talking to an institution. Like you're talking to someone who's the paperwork. Like you literally like you're talking to paperwork. It's man, psychosis. I wrote a book called, I wrote Psychosis of Whiteness, and it just gets righter every time. Like, well, I was correct. That I was right on the body with that. There is no other way you could explain any of this. Someone sat down and went, "Oh yeah. What should we do? We're the university for Black students." We're the University for Racial Equality. Let's target 5 black people, members of staff, and drag them in with less than 24 hours notice. Tell them that we've cut their course with that, discussing it with them, and potentially making them redundant. Yeah, let's do that because that makes sense, right? Lord have mercy. Is that what they say? Lord have mercy. So, anyway, like I said, we haven't sat down. We're not just taking it. We're fighting internally. This decision we are kept being told is a proposal, just a proposal. So no one's actually been made redundant or risk of redundancy technically until the end of the month. The consultation period ends. So 29th of May, the consultation period ends. 3rd of June, we will know our fate, whether or not they are going ahead or not going ahead. So what we're trying to do is to put as much pressure as possible on the university management to essentially say, look, this is a terrible idea. We've rethought this. We're not going to do. Right? That is a possibility. That is an option. That option is open. And this is what we're trying to get the university to do. As part of that, I wrote an open letter to the Board of Governors. So the Board of Governors oversee might be the perfect term here for this. Oversee university management. And so I've written to them and said, look, you need to step in here. It's clearly potentially discriminatory, potentially illegal the way it's been done, clearly problematic, generally goes against all the values, principles of the organization. Can you please get the executive team to rethink, pause, stop redundancies, actually to have a proper conversation about how we can go forward. And, Black studies should be something that's valued, not something that's seen as a distraction. That was signed by 130 people. Like I said, different people signed it. We sent it off now. And now there is a petition online. It's on change.org. So the links are below or in wherever you're listening to this. So yeah, the links are there. Please do share. Please do share. Please do sign. Offer your support. More people we can get on that. It's gone well so far. I think about 1,000 today since we put it up. So we're trying to get as many signatures as possible, and then we can send that through to the board as well and say, well, look, people care. This is something people care about. You just prove at some point that it's something people care about. And I've always said to people around, how have I stayed sane in the uni when there's so much internal nonsense? It's always been the community outside, right? It's always been, if any of us are looking for validation, security, reassurance inside, we'd have lost a long time ago. It's always been the work outside. It's always been very, very great to have that, feel that support, feel that love, feel that energy from people outside. And that's the thing that's going to sustain us. So we would ask you to sign the petition if you're so minded and if you want to support. Also, talk about psychosis. We're having Kimberly Crenshaw. So Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term intersectionality and also critical race theory, which I learned when I read her excellent new book, Backtalker, which I think is out now in the UK. I'd have to check, but will certainly be out by the 24th of May. Kim's coming to Birmingham. Big event. It's actually going to be our biggest event. We've got a lot of people signed up for this one. Sunday, 24th of May, 3 p.m. at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, which is part of BCU. So we rented that out. We've hired that out. And it's free event. And it's free. Well, it's free. It's now actually being paid. Psychosis, like I said, we just started Black Studies Research Cluster as part of the department's research center. And guess who's the leader of that? Me. Yeah. Who's now been told and made redundant. The deputy is Dr. Tony Talbot, who's also been told he's subject to redundancy. And the work includes everybody else's work in the department. And yeah, ridiculous, right? Let's start a Black Studies Cluster. While we know, by the way, this decision was taken in February, so it's not like they just found this out. And while they know they're doing this potential redundancies, they're supporting the Black Studies Research Cluster anyway. So that's what now is now paying for it and launching the event. It was originally supposed to be for the masters. MA, the same person who sat us all down and said, "Oh, we closed the course and you're at risk of redundancy. You're going to potentially risk of redundancy." We've known this since February. That very same person, the same person who in March and into April, but certainly March, was offering to pay for the Kimberly Crenshaw event as a marketing tool for the MA. Imagine how surprised we were when we told the MA had been closed, when we're literally organizing a huge event. By the way, a marketing event, and my job ain't marketed, to try to support the cause. Madness. Like I said, psychosis is the only word you can use. At some point, there's just no other words to use, right? So psychosis, it's deep. Anyway, so that event now is going to be much more of a semi-rally. It's going to be a celebration of the work that we've been doing. This could be the last Black Studies event at BCU, which would be a shame. Like over the last 10 years, just on Eventbrite, and we don't always do things for Eventbrite, We've done 37 events, apparently more than 7,000 attendees. We got a 2,000 plus mailing list. Like, this venue holds 400, and we're gonna have to stop registration soon. You know what I'm saying? This is one thing I had to say, very, very proud of, is that community engagement stuff that we do. Is that, you know, we have made the uni a place where people come, because they weren't coming to the university before. A place where people come in and engage. And so the community culture is honestly an academic who gets it, who's really on it, who just sees and pinpoints it. Wonderful. You have to come and see it. If you're around, free event, that's something you're never going to regret coming out to. And it's, like I said, could be the very last Black Studies event at the university. Will not be the last Black Studies event. Black Studies is not in the Black Studies in the university. It's not of the university. Like, we ran intro to Black Studies around BLBU last year, or maybe even 2 years ago. I meant to do it again. We're going to do it again. Promise. Just haven't had time. But we're going to start committing much more to that. Community education. Black Studies will be fine without the university. Like, Black Studies is a thing. This could be the next Black Studies event at the university, which will be a shame. So, but come out, support. This will definitely be a semi-rally. Show the university what they're missing. There ain't that many tickets left, by the way. So if you do want to go, book it quick, because once they're done. The registration will close pretty shortly. Looking at how fastly they're going. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're running, and we're inviting you all to. And yeah, I mean, if I could go in, and I just, I probably end up getting fired before I get made redundant. So I ain't gonna go in right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna give you I don't think I said anything that wasn't in the public letter, so I ain't gonna tooting. But there are many things. Many things. Oh my God, many things. If I actually got made redundant, imagine. Imagine that. Then you're gonna get stories. Then you're gonna get it all. Right now you can't get it all. You can just get the bits. But I think the bits are enough. Hopefully the bits are enough to explain Wagwan. How it's so bad. What we can do. We haven't given up just yet. Like I said, 29th of May. Before then, any pressure you want to send in, right into the VC, right into VCU, support the open letter. I should also say UCU's having a rally, so University College Union. Black Studies is one of the courses under threat. There are also 2 more courses, I believe, in architecture and engineering. 26 people in total potentially at risk of redundancy. So it's not just us, certainly. The us thing, I've told you about the us thing because it's so egregious, but it's not just us. This will be the first round of compulsory redundancies for academic staff. That hasn't happened to BCU yet. So the climate hasn't been that bad. The deficit, we haven't been as affected by the international student stop, which has really affected many universities. So it's not just us. There are other parts of the university under threat, and I would suggest more parts coming up. But part of me suspects that the reason we're in this position is to kind of make an example. If they can do it to us, they can do it to anybody. So maybe if they don't let it do it to us, they can't do it to anybody. It might be the way to think about it. So I believe there's a rally on the 18th of May for the general UCU, and for everybody, I think, but I don't know that for definite. But I will send that information around when I do have it as well. So yeah, I think that's the rub right now. So yeah, don't worry too much about reform yet. Please do support Black Studies staff, Black Studies work with the petition, etc. I'm tired. So I'm splitting headache, tired. Not what you need to be doing. Not what I was planning to do for 2 weeks once I came back from the West Africa trip. I actually had other things I wanted to do. Like, believe me, there were many, many things I really wanted to do. This was not one of them. But that's life, I guess, isn't it? So that's it. Tune in next week. Could be this week. So I might do Saturday. I might try and get back onto the Saturday schedule. But thank you for listening. Thank you for your support as always. And yeah, be good for next time.